Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Canada Hoops. It's your boy, Maddie. Thank you for your incredible support. Please continue to download, rate, and review us. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Our amazing guest today is a true icon in Canadian basketball. He represents Elmhurst, New York, and Antigonish, Nova Scotia. He is a former Acadia Axeman and was the men's basketball head coach for the St. Francis Xavier X-Men from 1975 to 2021, which is where he would truly establish himself as a legend in Canadian basketball. He was a head coach for the senior men's national team for Canada basketball, and his impact on the game in the country spans decades. Make some noise for Coach Steve Konchalski. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on Canada Hoops.
Anytime. I'm good to talk basketball anytime.
I know, I love that, and it's a true honor to have you join us. And I've enjoyed our conversations here in Calgary at the Surge games. I feel like I could listen to you and share your stories for hours. And I was excited for this conversation. How are things, Coach? Let our listeners know how you're doing and your fans and friends and just what you've been up to these days.
Well, I mean, I'm back home in Antigonish right now. I just got back this past Sunday after 5 weeks with the Surge, and I'm really enjoying working with the Surge. It's a great group of people from ownership down to the coaches to the general manager, and I'm kind of senior advisor with that organization, and which kind of encompasses a lot because I get to work with all different phases of the organization
Right.
and basically tell them what I think. And if they, and I think that's the value that I have is I'm not afraid to tell them what I think, and if they don't accept it, then I'm good with that. But at the same time, that's what they hired me for to use my experience.
Yeah, I know you've enjoyed the role, and I'm just curious. Did you know a lot of people within the organization prior to them bringing you on? Like, how did that connection get established? Like, did you know Shane for a while previously?
Yeah, I've known Shane since he was a player with the national team. U22 team. Two of my former players at St. X were teammates of his on those age group teams.
Right.
And Gary Gallimore and Neil McDonald, who's living in Edmonton right now. So I've known Shane since then, and then he went into coaching, and I recruited his players to St. X when he was coaching at Thornley Academy. So we've known each other for a while. Other than that, basically my connection with the CEBL was Joe Razzo. Joe was my assistant coach with the senior national team when I was the head coach in the late 90s. And so Joe and I have maintained a very close relationship. And of course, he's working with the CEBL. And I actually started talking to him a couple of years ago when my retirement was on the horizon. And, we knew Calgary was in the works. And my wife and I, we have a daughter in Calgary and now a couple of grandchildren. So, but the Calgary situation wasn't, hadn't materialized yet. It was going to happen, this summer, 2023. So I hooked up with the Newfoundland entry in the league, the Newfoundland Growlers, which unfortunately, due to mainly a venue problem, but um, they're not operating this year. So I worked with them last summer in a similar capacity, which really gave me a great insight into the league. It's different than coaching in college. It's different than coaching with the national team, and so that really gave me some experience. And I think the organization, Jason Ribeiro, recognized, that I had that experience, and he wanted to bring that to the new organization here in Calgary, and so that's basically how I got here.
Yeah, I love it. It's It's an exciting time in the city, as you know, for the game, and everyone's really loved the surge here and the product. I'm just curious from your point of view before we get into your story, just how important um, and how vital has the CEBL been to the game in the country. It's year 5 for the league, putting these teams and more basketball in these markets. Just it's been a long time coming, as a lot of people have said. Um, and with your experience in the game, just how important is the CEBL right now?
Well, I think it's very, very important because it finally gives Canadian players a chance to play, uh, you know, professionally in their own country. And the Canadian, I think, if anything, the strength of our Canadian players has improved more so than the American players. I think when the league first started 5 years ago, and I really wasn't super connected to it at the time, but the American players kind of dominated, and now the Canadian players uh, are a big part. Certainly in Calgary, with Simi Shitu and uh, and Ruggsy and uh, Steph Smith. Uh, those are three, excellent Canadian players, and that they've been perhaps our strength of our team this year.
Right. Yeah, it's been exciting, and I think they've done a good job in how they've built the league and promoted it with the emphasis on the Canadian guys. And I've had lots of guests join us where they play in the league coming home from overseas or maybe the G, and they've just really valued that opportunity to play at home and play in front of friends and family where they don't get to do that very much. And I think the league is on the right path, and having people like yourself involved speaks volumes. Really gives a lot of credibility to the league and franchises. So, I think everyone's super excited and looking forward to supporting it even further. I just wanted to touch on one more thing, Coach. I mean, you retired from coaching at St. FX and kind of jumped into the advisor role. You're not looking to slow down, are you? You just keep going with the game, and you think you might just want to sit back and enjoy retirement, but you still love to be super involved, don't you?
Well, if you love the game and
Right.
to be good at the game, player, coach, whatever, management, you have to love the game. And I grew up in New York City, um, and but my love of the game hasn't waned. And when I retired from St. Bex, I said, I'm retiring from St. Bex, but I'm not retiring from basketball. I just didn't know exactly where I was
Right.
going to land, but I knew I didn't. I wanted to stay involved in the game and the people around it. And we got some great people in the whole organization and with the surge. So it's made as we did last year in Newfoundland. But I've really enjoyed my connection to the league.
I love to hear that. I was hoping we could kind of go way back when you were a youngster, running around Elmhurst, and just talk about how the game came into the picture for you and growing up. And I'm not sure if you played other sports, but I'd love to just kind of hear about the start of your journey in the game and just what young Steve was like back then.
Well, young Steve wasn't a very good athlete. My dad was a semi-pro professional baseball player. So
Okay.
baseball was my first love, and I still love the game. I love watching the game, uh, but I really couldn't hit, so that kind of limited my my baseball career. Um, but on a more serious note, when I went to entered Archbishop Molly High School, uh, as a 13-year-old. Archbishop Molloy at the time um, was on a 48-game winning streak. This is in New York City, and so the caliber of basketball, was extremely high, maybe the highest in the country. And they had won the National Catholic Championship the year before, Lou Konchalski, the Hall of Fame coach, was the coach up until my freshman year when I arrived. And then he went on to St. John's and Hall of Fame, a Hall of Fame career. So that was the environment that I came into at Archbishop Molly. Now, I tried out for the freshman team, but I was probably one of the first, if not the first player cut, because I didn't really know how to play. I played around with it a little bit, but then I worked hard and I made the JV team my sophomore year, and probably 10th, 11th man, whatever. Didn't get much of a chance to really show what I could do. And then the real turning point of my playing career was that summer. I was 15 years old, and my local playground, Hoffman Drive Park, didn't usually have a lot of college players or the high level competition, but I was there every day shooting the ball, day and night, because I wanted to make the varsity team in my junior year. I was going to have to beat out probably 8 to 10 players who had played ahead of me on the JV team. And fortunately, that summer there were about 20 college players. Some of them Division I, some of them Division II, small schools, whatever. But they came Monday to Thursday every night to play at that park. And I was the only kid that they would let play with them because they saw me there day and night. They saw me there all the time, and they said, "Hey, kid, you get into our games." And I got my butt kicked every single night by players from Providence, St. John's, whatever. But I kind of became a basketball player then. Playing against players that were much better than me, and I made the varsity team. Now I didn't have much of a great career. I played for a legendary coach there as well, Jack Curran, but he was friends with Stu Aberdeen, the coach at Acadia.
Right.
And Stu Aberdeen came down to New York, to Archbishop Molly, and had a tryout for a bunch of players that didn't have scholarships at the time. And he saw me play, and he recruited me, and that really changed. The second thing that changed my life was obviously, a 17-year-old high school graduate, going up to Nova Scotia. I had to look at the map to see where it was, and but I was looking for a small school. I was looking for a place where it would give me a chance to show what I could do, because obviously at that age I was going to be a late bloomer. And Coach Aberdeen was an amazing coach. He was amazing. He went on to the University of Tennessee as the associate coach and the head coach at Marshall University after I graduated from Acadia. So he proved himself as a coach, and he was a great motivator, a great person to play for. And so he recruited some other friends of mine from New York City as well that came up to play at Acadia. We won a national championship in 1965. And that's how I landed in Canada. It was through through my playing career at Archbishop Molly, my coach's connection with Stu Aberdeen, and I just really fell in love with the small town. And kid from New York City, I didn't really feel it was any major adjustment to the small. That's what I wanted: a small town, small campus where I could get a good education and get an opportunity to show what I could do on the basketball court.
What, hey, Steve, are you getting a lot of feedback on your end there?
I'm not getting any feedback.
Okay. I can edit all this part out here. I'm just hearing a bit, but I think I have the mic too loud here. Well, I'll just kind of jump back to Acadia here in a second. Coach, heading up to Acadia in the 1960s, like what were your expectations in terms of, I know you mentioned wanting to be in a small town, but what did you know about the basketball in Canada at that time, and what kind of knowledge did you have about the game and the country itself? Like, just kind of take me back to that the arrival into the country.
Well, I can say not very much. I just, I had a belief in Coach Aberdeen, and having other players from New York come up with me, was a bit of a comforting thought as well, that I wasn't the only American up there. In fact, when we won the national championship in 1965, our whole starting five were Americans. So
Oh wow.
they had to change the rule then. We could only have 3 Americans. And the team that we beat was the University of Windsor. Team we beat for the national title was the University of Windsor, and they had 4 starters from the United States. So 9 of the 10 starters in that game were Americans. But Canadian basketball has changed so much right now. I mean, some of the coaches that recruited, Division I coaches that recruited in New York City back in those days, now they come to Toronto. So, and into different parts of Canada, across the country, of course, not just as evidence. Kyle Landry, who coaches with us with the Surge, I actually recruited him to St. Bex. Came down to visit our campus. His mom came with him, but he went on to a very great career at Northern Arizona, and many years playing professional and with Canada's national team. So, the Canadian basketball has come a long way since those days when we had all Americans on the court.
Yeah. Shout out Kyle. He's joined us early on in the podcast and kind of a Calgary legend within the game. And I don't think he told me that. I remember him telling me that, like, obviously in Canada, UFC recruited him. And I can't remember if he mentioned St. FX or not. So I hope he gives the episode a listen. When you're done playing at Acadia, Coach, your playing career winds down. Like, what was the next step for you? Hit the workforce?
Well, actually, I knew I wanted to go on and continue my education after I did my undergraduate degree. And I had 2 options. I was considering was education, and the other one is law school. And I chose to go to Dalhousie Law School for a couple of reasons. One reason was a law degree. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do in a law degree. I thought could give me more options going forward. I can use that law degree in so many different ways. And never did I think it would be coaching basketball, mind you. But at the same time, the other thing was that was during the Vietnam War, and if you were in university, continuing your education, you got a deferment. You didn't have to go to Vietnam. Basically, you couldn't be drafted while you were still a student. And law school was 3 years. Education in those days was 1 year. So do the math. And I ended up completing my law degree at Dalhousie. And then how did I end up coaching? After I went back to the States and, basically got my draft status and everything under control, so I could go back to Canada. I came back to the place where I was most comfortable. I came back to Acadia, and they offered me the opportunity to coach the junior varsity team. I never thought I was going to coach. I just said, sure. I had to pay the bills somehow. So that was my first coaching experience in 1970, I guess it was, coaching the Acadia junior varsity team.
And so you start doing that, and like you said, you weren't ever picturing yourself as a coach. How do you start to navigate that? Like, did you have coaching mentors to start leaning on? Like, who did you connect with? And start to develop the coaching skills?
Well, Coach Aberdeen, like I played for a Hall of Fame coach at Archbishop Molly Jack Curran.
Right.
I played for Hall of Fame coach in Coach Aberdeen. So after that year of coaching the junior varsity team, I said, okay, this is what I think I want to do. So there were 2 jobs open in Ontario, Waterloo and Carleton. And I knew they weren't going to call me up to interview me because I didn't have any experience. So I called them up. And I said, introduced myself, and I said, look, it's not going to cost you a cent. I'm going to come to, if you would be willing to grant me an interview, I'm going to come and sit down with you and with your athletic staff, your athletic director, and I'd like to, present myself as a candidate for the job. So I got in my little Volkswagen Bug and drove to Waterloo, and then I drove to Carleton, sat down and had meetings and dinner and whatnot with the staff there, and of course they both ended up hiring. Well, Waterloo ended up hiring Hall of Fame coach Don McRae, and Carleton ended up hiring Bob Obilovich, who was a professional, ended up eventually became coach of the Ottawa Rough Riders and many years in the CFL. And then, so I was stuck again. So a friend of mine was at Loyola College, which is now part of Concordia University. And he said, well, they could use an assistant coach. So I drove to Montreal and I was interviewed, but they didn't have a position. There was a paying position. But later on that summer, I got a call, probably in August, that a position opened up, the coordinator of men's athletics at Concordia at Loyola College at the time. And that was a full-time position. It was a lot of responsibility, run the intramural program, doing a whole bunch of things like that, sports information director. But I could also work with the men's basketball team. So I did that for 3 or 4 years. And while I was in Montreal, I went to a basketball clinic given by the legendary Jack Donahue.
Right.
And he was given a clinic in Montreal in 1972. He had taken over the national team position that from New York City. He had coached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in high school, Lou Alcindor at the time. And he and my high school coach were very good friends. So after the clinic, I introduced myself to Coach Donahue, and I said, he kind of vaguely remembered me, but he wouldn't have remembered. I wasn't a star player or whatnot. Anyway, I said, I'd love to work with the national program. If you're ever looking for anybody to help out in any capacity, let me know. So the next summer, early in the spring of 1973, I got a phone call from Coach Donahue. They needed a manager for the national team. And once I cleared it with the people at Loyola, I said, I'd love to take the position. I said, but Coach, I really want to be a coach. So as the manager, if you could get me involved in any coaching responsibilities, once I finished my managerial duties. Anyway, I ended up being a manager in 1973. And we traveled to all over the world, including Cuba, played in front of Fidel Castro. It was amazing. 1974, I came into training camp as the manager once again. But the head assistant coach, and the only assistant coach at the time, got called out of training camp because his university was promoting him to the dean of physical education, and they wouldn't let him take the summer off with the national team.
Right.
So I was just in the right place at the right time, and I slipped into the assistant coaching role with Coach Donahue, and I was his assistant coach for 16 years, and I went to 3 Olympic Games, and it was the biggest break of my career. And I had the biggest thing about it. I got to work with and coach with. To me, the greatest coach that ever set foot in Canada, uh, Coach Donahue. We're trying to get into one Olympics. We're trying to qualify for one Olympics, and he got into 4 out of 4 Olympic cycles, and with much less talent. Just a great coach and a wonderful human being that taught me so much, and became my mentor as I progressed in my coaching career. So that was my biggest break ever. I've been with the national team program on and off for 30 plus years, and it was that meeting with him and at the coaches clinic, and then accepting a job as manager, and not being too picky about what I wanted to do. I'll do anything. Eric Spoelstra started with the Miami Heat in the video room,
Right.
and now I've been head coach for 15 years. So that's a lesson in itself.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it just speaks to doing whatever it takes, right? Not being too good for a job in your own mind. And um, if you hadn't have done that, who knows what would have broke your way for opportunity, right? I just think that speaks volume and is a good teaching point. And everyone that um, I've connected with that has um, had the opportunity to either play for Jack or knew him, I don't think people fully understood, um, especially today, just his impact on the game and what he did for the program and developing Canadian players. And so I always love to hear the stories from back then. And so at like, what point are you now starting to have the same effects? Like, when does that job opportunity come up? And I think it was right around that time, was it not?
Yeah, well, it was the St. FX job opened up in 1975.
Okay.
And actually, the year before, I knew I wanted to be a head coach. A little known fact is that I actually, the year before, I was offered the job at UPEI.
Okay.
And I came very close to taking it, but at the same time, I just didn't feel it was the right fit for me at the time. They had a little tiny gym. You couldn't fit, you needed a shoehorn to fit people, to get more than 100 people in there. And, in those days at PEI, you didn't have the bridge, the link to drive there. You had to take the ferry on a ferry boat every time you got on and off the island and things like that. So I held off on that, and then the St. FX job opened up the next year, and it was August. They didn't have a coach, so they were pretty desperate. And I went up for the interview, and they offered me the position. So that changed my life. The athletic director was a gentleman, another mentor of mine, Father George Keogh, who ended up marrying my wife and I and baptizing our children.
Wow.
But he told me from day one. He said, Steve, you should come. You should make a career here. You should marry a local girl, which I did, and raise a family and make a career here at St. FX. 46 years later, he was he was right on. Antigonish being a beautiful little town to raise a family. It's certainly out of the way, but I got through the national team. I got a chance to travel the world, so being in a small town didn't really bother me, and it's been home ever since.
Yeah, I mean, people obviously know you in the game in this country, obviously with the national team time as well, but certainly your career at St. FX is the best. You've had the most wins ever. I mean, um, took the team to national titles in '93, 2000, and 2001. You made the national tournament 13 times. There's so many stats, Coach. What, like, I know you've had a lot of time to reflect on the journey, and specifically your time at St. FX, um, what really stands out for you as a head coach there? Like, is there a team you're particularly fond of, or a group of players, or relationships in the community? Like, just take me through your tenure, coach.
Well, I think like most young coaches, what attracts them to coaching is they love to play and they couldn't play anymore.
Right.
So they gave coaching a try. And I was no different than anybody else as far as that goes. But I think as the reason why similar to my preference of a small school as an undergraduate to play at Acadia, the same thing. I wanted to coach at a similar type school where I could develop relationships with my players, where I could, where I knew what they were doing. They could come by my office, and I know when I was in Montreal those years, the only time you saw the players was at practice, but in a small town, I mean, if we had a player that at St. Bex back in those days, if a player was, let's say, missed a couple of classes, the professor would call me up and say, "Steve, I just want to let you know, so missed class. He hasn't been in class all week." So you can stay on top of those things and put out fires and develop relationships. And I think that's what, like I said, when you first start coaching, you're transitioning from a player to coach, you're doing it for the excitement of the game, stay involved in the game, and the games became, that's what you fed off of. But the longer I coached, the more first of all, the more I probably enjoyed the practice part of it more in terms of developing players. But, developing the relationships is the biggest really thing. Somebody interviewed me a couple of years before I retired, and they said, "What would you like to be remembered by after, once you do retire?" And I said, and I still say the same thing, that I cared for my players. I developed those relationships that there's players now that still call me for references, provide references for jobs. They may have, family situations or decisions they have to make career-wise that they'll connect with me. And if I didn't have that, if I didn't put the value that I do on those relationships, that wouldn't happen. So I've tried to develop a family that that stays connected, and that's really what's kept me. It kept me at St. Bex all those years is the ability to develop those relationships.
Well, I can speak firsthand from having conversations with you here in Calgary at the Surge games. I've always been impressed by uh, players from obviously Calgary, but other teams too. When they see you and you have that connection, that relationship with them, they make sure to say hi to you, shake your hand, show you love. So I've seen that firsthand, and I just think that's really special. And I wonder, like, obviously everyone likes to win, and you have over 900 wins as a head coach. Um, but as you're going through, is there an actual shift in focus, do you think, in terms of, like, everyone wants to have success and win, and that keeps you employed and uh, brings more players in, but is it a shift where you realize, like, how important the relationships are, like the day to day, like um, what's that approach? Like, you're always really mindful of that?
Well, I am now because I have the benefit of age,
Right.
and I would like to think maturity. But it's funny we won our first national championship in 1993. I was interviewed on TSN after the game, and they asked me because I was one of the only, and I think it's still only three people that have won a national championship as a player and as a coach
Right.
well, now called youth sports. And they asked me what was more exciting, or what was more rewarding, winning a national championship as a player and as a coach. And at that time, I mean, I guess I was just so excited to win a national championship because I just said, well, they were both great. Having time to reflect and then actually talking to some of my former teammates, Brian Heaney being one, who Brian Heaney played with me in the national in '65 when we won the nationals, and he won as well three national championships at St. Mary's. Winning it as a coach actually was more, when I look back at it, was more rewarding because you could share it with 12 players, managers, staff, whatever you had. As an individual, as a player, you tend, sure, you were teammates and you cared about your other teammates and whatnot, but it's not the same amount of relationship. You'll have a different relationship. Whereas you win it as a coach, you recruited those players, you were in their home, speaking with their parents, you knew their background, you were helping them through the ups and downs of university life, academics, social, whatever it might be. And so I think that was a kind of an eye-opening thing to me to look at it from that perspective.
Wow, great insight. And, that makes a lot of sense. You're leading the team, they're leading the program as a head coach, and you get to help deliver that title to everyone as a group. So that would make a lot of sense. Coach, I'm wondering, you're getting ready to retire. How did that retire from the head coaching job? How did that decision start to come about? Were you waiting for the right person to sort of hand the program over to? Like, did you know Tyrell was going to be that guy? And I know he was just here on Wednesday with Scarborough, helping them. Yeah, I was at the game. It was.
Well, it wasn't our best game.
No, I thought Thomas, so I connected with Thomas before the game to chat and join us in the future, and he played really well. He had a monster game. So, but yeah, Tyrell was on the bench. Um, did you just? How'd you know that time was coming? And was it Tyrell being there and thinking like he's the next guy? Just kind of take me through that decision.
Well, probably after I coached my 30th year, the media started asking me, how long are you going to do this? And they asked me every year.
Right.
And I always said the same thing. I don't know. I haven't put a number on it. Some of my coaching buddies with the national team say, come on, you can do 50. You can do 50. I said, no, but I'm not setting any number. I'll know when it's time. And two things happened. First of all, St. Bex was awarded the hosting privileges for the national championship, right. In 2021. And that was going to be at the Halifax Scotiabank Center, where we won our 3 national championships. And so that made sense. So I could finish my coaching career, in Nova Scotia, at the national championships, which and that building meant so much to me and still does, because we lost a lot in that building too, but we've won a lot too. And so I kind of did it around there. And then I talked to our athletic director and I said, look, there's a young coach that played for me. Tyrell played for me in 2011 to 2013. And we'd stayed in touch when he was coaching in prep school in Ontario. We stayed in touch all through that. I'd visit him. I'd recruited some of his players. And he was achieving a high degree of success. They won back-to-back national. They went to the championship game of the OSBA 3 years in a row. They lost it at the buzzer in the first year. I was at the game, and then he won back-to-back OSBA championships. So he was achieving all this success. He had all the recruiting contacts, which is you're seeing the results of it now at St. Bex with the caliber of players that he's bringing in.
Right.
And I just thought Terrell would be a great fit. If we could bring Terrell in and work with me for 2 years, first of all, it would take some of the heavy lifting away from me my last 2 years. And second of all, obviously, he'd bring all this value to the program. Third of all, it would prepare him to take over. And Leo McPherson, our athletic director, had the foresight to do that. And so it was all fitting together, except one thing happened: COVID. So
Right.
COVID got in the way, and my last year was not coaching in the national championship. It was practicing all year, and it was at the end of the year. Acadia, my alma mater, they got special permission. It was the only game played all year in youth sports. One Acadia came up to St. Bex. They only allowed 100 people in the gym, and everybody had to be tested to get into the gym. All the players, whatever, and they allowed one game. So I coached one game, and fortunately we won. It was a nice way, but it was a consolation prize compared to coaching in the national tournament. But that year actually became a very challenging year in the sense of, if I was going through this, imagine what the players at 18, 19, 20 were going through. So I changed my whole focus from trying to win a national championship to focusing on the mental health of the young people I was working with. We practiced 4 times. We practiced 4 times a week. We had a game situation. We call it game day every Saturday. Put up the scoreboard, kept stats, did everything, kept their focus, but mainly kept their mental focus, going through this difficult period that we all went through. So I took the focus away from feeling sorry for myself. I'm not going to coach last year the way it was planned, to focusing on the players, and that's what it should be. So anyway, Terrell took over, and they came within a fraction of a second to winning the national championship this year, and I was right there, cheering them on, but and we talk regularly, and I dropped for my first year. I retired. I stayed away from practice completely because I figured not only does he need a break from me being around, but I need a break. I got to break this habit after walking to the gym. It's a 10-minute walk from my house where I'm speaking from right now. Did that for 46 years. And I needed the break. But this year I was around a little bit more, because the break had been made. Terrell was established himself he's the coach now. And hey, he's going to run a great program.
Yeah, it appears so. And then he's had the ability to bring in some really good players. And I'm sure he's grateful for the opportunity and that connection with you to take the program over. And I just want to highlight something real quick, kind of a personal thing for me. And I mentioned this to you, our last conversation here in Calgary, but you were coming off back-to-back national championships, I believe, in 2000, 2001, and then you were coaching the Canada Summer Games team for Nova Scotia. And I had the opportunity to play against with you. And I remember looking over at the sideline, and our coach, Tim Brady, was that's Coach K, and we were just kind of like, this is crazy. I mean, we're playing against the national champion head coach, and that game was always really special for myself and my teammates because it was our last time playing provincially for the Yukon and our group, and we were always kind of regarded as a special group ourselves for what we did. So that was a highlight, and I always think back to that game with fond memories and seeing you on the sideline, and it was just, we were just kind of stunned, right? So um, I know you've coached so many different teams and incredible memories, and um, your history in the game is truly special. Uh, Coach, I'm just wondering, when we get into more of the Canada basketball stuff, you've mentioned your time with the team a little bit already, and connection with Jack. Um, where does representing Canada rank for you in your career, and just having that ability to be part of the program? Like, is that the highlight for you?
Well, it's to me, the whole, my whole time coaching the game, I mean, being involved in the game and being involved, I continue to be involved with Canada basketball. I wasn't on. This is the first year, other than COVID year, in 12 years, I think, that I haven't actually been at one of the age group training camps. But to me, I look at it as it's all a highlight. And anytime you represent your country, and I am a Canadian citizen. I became a Canadian citizen in the late '90s, and so anytime you represent your country, it's amazing. The Olympics, and then you mentioned Canada Summer Games. That was a great experience. Representing the province of Nova Scotia,
Right.
and proud to say my daughter, one of my daughters, represented Nova Scotia, won a bronze medal in 2005. So, and I remember Steve Nash, who I was fortunate enough to coach for a couple of years. He made me look pretty smart. Anyway, he played in Canada games.
Right.
And where I was at a national team training camp just before that Canada games, and he the 2005 Canada games, and he signed the program for my daughter Maria. Wishing her best of luck in Canada games again. So, I think your experience was great, and so was mine at that event.
Yeah, it is a unique event. You had mentioned that before. With the national team stuff, I know you close relationship with Jack uh, through your time at the program. Like, anybody else stand out? Maybe somebody that really helped you and mentored you that you learned from. Like, who through your time at the program, that did you grow a close relationship with and still close with to this day? Anybody in particular kind of come to mind?
Well, there are several people, but more recently, like since 2009, like I had a break from the national team program from the late '90s until 2009, and then Canada basketball came to me, and they said, we want to get you and some of the other coaches that had been divorced from the program. We want to get you back in the fold, and so I agreed to come on as part of what they call the Council of Excellence. And I just said, I'll come back, but I'll come back under the terms. I don't want to be on a committee. You put my name on a list. I'm on a conference call every 3 months. I'm not interested in that. If I'm going to come back, I want to come back. I want to be in training camp. I want to be on some trips. I want to be involved in the game, hands-on. So in the summer of 2009, the U19 Worlds were in Auckland, New Zealand, and Greg Francis, who passed away very suddenly 2 or 3 months ago, was the head coach, and I went on a trip, and I kind of developed this position of mentor coach, which really wasn't outlined for me when I agreed to come back. And it lasted right through, like I said, not this summer, but last summer when I went into training camp and being a mentor coach for the age group teams. And it gave me an opportunity. I developed a relationship. I had a great relationship with Greg, and he was a great man. God rest his soul. But the man I worked with the most, I worked with Coach Roy Rana, who's now coaching the Egyptian national team. He qualified them for the World Cup.
Yeah.
Coaching in Japan. He coached with Germany in the last Olympics. He helped get them into the Olympic Games. Just a great coach. We worked together for 7 summers. I just spent the day with him in Toronto, actually this past weekend, and that's a special. That developed into a special relationship. He's in Japan, and we talk every couple of weeks. And he's been amazing in terms of his work. We won a world championship together in 2017 in Egypt when R.J. Barrett dominated the U.S., scoring 38 points and 13 rebounds, and winning world champ, the only world championship Canada's ever won in basketball. Won the gold medal. So Roy's been a special, more in terms of in the last 10 years, and the relationship that we've developed, and my respect for him as a coach and as a person.
Yeah, well said. And I wanted to ask you about the U19 team in 2017. Like that team, the Canadian basketball community was rallying that team and watching every game. And that was a special group, and some great players were a part of that team, and a couple Nova Scotia guys, Lindell and Nate. Is that team a highlight for you through all your time with the national team? Like how special is that team?
Well, if you look over my right shoulder, there's 6 pictures up on that wall, and the one in color, which is right the side of my head,
I see it.
is that national team.
Mm-hmm.
The other pictures there, I have 6 pictures. I had my whole office. When you're in an office for 46 years, you collect a lot. My whole office was filled with pictures. I had over 250 pictures on my wall.
Wow.
And not because those are relationships. That was my home for 46 years, and I built those relationships. Anyway, so I had a downsize, shall we say, when we came home. My wife put 250 pictures up in the living room. So the pictures on there are the picture that I mentioned, the World Championship, my national championship team in 1965 at Acadia, the 3 national championships that we won, as you mentioned, at St. X, and then in 1983, coming back to the province of Alberta, the World University Games were in Edmonton, and we won the gold medal at the University Games in Edmonton, and that picture is up there as well. And in doing so, we beat the United States in the semifinals, and they had a fellow by the name of Charles Barkley, a fellow by the name of Karl Malone, a fellow by the name of Johnny Dawkins, a fellow by the name of Kevin Willis. All these, NBA, had great careers in the NBA. And we beat them in the semifinals, and then we beat Yugoslavia, who was then the number 1 team in the world. We beat them in the final game. They had Drazen Petrovic, who tragically died in a car crash. He played, he was playing for the New Jersey Nets at the time. Died in a car crash in Germany, probably 20 years ago now. But those are the teams those were special memories.
Yeah, those are, great teams for the program. Obviously, your teams at St. FX. I just wanted to ask, because you have spent decades with the national team. Is there someone that's been involved with the program over the years that you think is somewhat underrated or underappreciated with their time with the program? Maybe they don't get enough recognition for what they've done? There's been so many people that have been highlighted, but perhaps someone that doesn't get recognized enough.
Well, I'm going to go back to my first years with the national team program, right? 1973, 74, 75, and then culminating in 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal. A player has been lost in the shuffle. I think Jack Donahue to a certain extent, because players today,
Right.
they would have no idea who Jack Donahue was, which is understandable. But the player that you mentioned, that you say hasn't gotten this recognition, was a guard from Chemainus, BC, by the name of Billy Robinson. Billy Robinson was a terrific. He was Steve Nash before Steve Nash.
Right.
He was a terrific basketball player. Great story. So in 1972, I wasn't with Coach Donahue until 73. 72, they had a tryout. It was in BC somewhere. Billy Robinson was the best player at the tryout. And Coach Donahue's first tryout with the national team. Billy Robinson had big bushy hair, a big beard, and Coach Donahue told him, "You can make the team, but you got to cut your hair and you got to shave that beard." Billy Robinson, being Billy Robinson, wouldn't do it.
Right.
So he cut him. He cut the best player in the country. That's how he established himself.
Wow.
And the story behind it is that Billy Robinson, I wasn't there for it, but he went out to, probably had a few pops, went out to the beach, took all his basketball gear, put it on a raft, set it on fire, and pushed it out to the ocean. Next year, and I was at this training camp. It was at the University of Manitoba. Billy Robinson came back with shorter hair and a shaved beard, cleanly shaven, and he was our best player for the next 4 years. Now, what Jack used to say, he said, Billy and I had a love-hate relationship. I loved him and he hated me. So,
right.
But they survived 4 years, and Billy helped get us to the Olympic Games, where in 1972 we were 11th in the play-in tournament. So after everybody qualified for the Olympics, they had a play-in tournament in those days that you had to finish in the top 3, I guess, to get to the Olympics. We were like 11th in that play-in tournament. 4 years later, we lost in the bronze medal game to the USSR in Montreal. We were 4th in the world. And that's what Jack Donahue did that. That's why like I said, he was such a great coach, and he did it through motivation, but he also did it. He was a tough coach. And Billy Robinson was he was just a tremendous shooter. He was only about 5'11", but he could handle the ball. He used to walk the streets of Europe with all the cobblestone steps. He always brought his basketball with him on the trip. Always had his basketball. He would walk the streets dribbling on those cobblestone streets to work on his handle.
Right.
What happened in the 76 Olympics, he got really upset because somebody on a lark stole his basketball. He had it in the Olympic Village, and somebody stole his basketball, and he got really out of sorts. But they were just playing games with him, and he got it back to him. But anyway, Billy Robinson is the guy that I would say has got lost in the shuffle in terms of one of the great players that ever played in the country, and it's relatively unknown.
Yeah, Jay. When Jay Triano joined a few episodes ago, I mean, he had put Billy in his top 5 of all time because Billy was the guy Jay loved, looked up to. Jay said Billy had taken him under his wing and grew to really love Jay, and So I love hearing the history from everyone and some of the great names. Coach, I gave you this question. Who is your top five or favorite five of all time for Canada basketball?
Well, I'm not going to say favorite because the coaches aren't supposed to show favoritism.
Okay, right.
But um, Billy Robinson, I did some thinking here, and I came up with 5 or 6. I'll take the liberty of
Perfect.
adding 1 or 2 more. Uh, Billy Robinson, Steve Nash, Jay Triano, Leo Routens, and then you almost have to put in Billy Winnington because he's got 3 championship rings with the Bulls and with the Michael Jordan Bulls.
Right.
And 2 other names that are on the periphery of that group would be a fellow by the name of Phil Tolstrup from Raymond, Alberta.
I know the name.
You would know it. There's a Tolstrup family is huge.
Right.
And he played at Brigham Young, BYU, and he was the second leading scorer in the 1976 Olympic Games. 6'5", played in Spain for many years after that. And then it's also hard not to think of the late, great Eli Pasquale,
Right.
point guard extraordinaire. In the 1988 Olympics, the U.S. had built their team. John Thompson had built their team around pressure defense. And Eli single-handedly went through their pressure defense for 36 minutes. He wore down, and we led the U.S. for 36 minutes. They had David Robinson and a bunch of Danny Manning and whatever. And he was, anyway, Eli was a great player. Came back as a 37-year-old. I asked him to come back when I coached the team. We had to go down to Uruguay to qualify for the World Championships. And I said, I got to bring in some veteran guys. Eli was 37. I said, Eli, can you make it? I had to talk him into it. And he came down, and after we qualified, he was basically Steve Nash's caddy. After we qualified, he said, he says, Coach, I've never been to a qualifying tournament that we didn't qualify. So even at 37 and having a relatively minor role on the court, but off the court in terms of his leadership and experience and whatnot, Eli's got to be in that group. Now, the next group that I thought about when you brought this forward to me, since I came back in 2009,
Right.
I've been fortunate enough to work with some of the great players that are in the NBA right now. That first summer, we had Kelly Olynyk, we had Tristan Thompson, and we had Corey Joseph.
Right.
3 guys who have made careers in the NBA were on that team. Subsequent years, we had Andrew Wiggins, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Dylan Brooks, R.J. Barrett, Andrew Nembhard, and it was a great opportunity for me, as a veteran coach, playing more of this type of a role, advisory role, to get to work with these young kids. And 2 of those players are now that I worked with are now members of the Calgary Surge, Simi Shitu,
Right.
and Steph Smith. So it all comes around. What goes around comes around. And when I walked into the training camp and saw, it was nice to see those faces. And I think hopefully they felt the same way. But yeah,
I'm
so
sure they did.
it's been a great experience coming back and working in this capacity with the national team and obviously in the CEBL.
Yeah, listen, Coach. I mean, outstanding five, and what's funny is that's the first Billy Wennington reference. Like Bill is never, and anyone that I've had on the podcast, maybe another guy that gets lost in the shuffle, but no one else has put him in their five. So props to you, and that's really cool because a three-time NBA champion, and I know he was a big part of the national team program, 70s and 80s, and then you mentioned the new wave of players as well, and they're the ones that are going to push things forward even more. And some of them, like Kelly and Corey, have been very committed to the program and helping them move it forward. What about maybe top five coaches? What do you think
Oh,
would land into that?
now you're going to get me in trouble.
Well,
Uh,
I know four. I came up with four. So I would have probably Jack, right? And then I'm gonna put you in there.
well, thank you.
Well, it goes without saying. I'm gonna put Jay in there. Jay coached the last Olympic team in 2000, and that's a special team for me. With really kind of kickstarted my love for the national team. And I was gonna put Roy in. I'm glad you brought Roy up. Roy has done a lot for the game in the country, and obviously that U19 team was very special. Um, and then I think so. I had four, and I wanted to show some love to Lisa Tomaitis as well for the women's team and what she did with the team through her tenure and really pushing the program forward on the women's side and having a lot of players commit and buy in. So that was my quick. I was thinking about that this morning. Like, oh,
Right.
what about a coaching five?
Well, that's I would agree. I would agree with what you have there. I would say Alison McNeil from the
Right,
women's side would be somebody that I would think about. Um, and even though he hasn't done it, he did it more as an assistant coach. But you can't ignore Dave Smart's
right,
career. Not so much with the national team as an assistant, um, but just his whole body of work. Because he was an assistant coach for several years and did coach the U18 team. I got the opportunity to work with him in 2018 with the U18 qualification tournament in St. Catharines. I mean, anybody mentions the great coaches in the country. To do what he's done at Carleton is unheard of.
right.
Personally, unheard of. It's a John Wooden thing that happened. John Wooden was 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Um, and what Dave has done with that Carleton program in this day and age, it's incredible.
No, agreed, and obviously, whether it's players or coaches, there's so many people that you could put in, and it's a hard thing to do. I always enjoy asking that question, and I thought we'd try some coaching one with you joining us. And Steve, any shout outs or thank yous? I know there's been so many people through your time in the game, and you're still going. Um, just anyone that you want to thank and recognize, just that's been a part of your journey.
Well, I think the people that I mentioned, unfortunately, several of them have passed.
Right,
The people that have been so influential, Stu Aberdeen bringing me to Canada, um, you know, uh, Father George Keogh at St. Levax, who hired me, was a mentor of mine there. Um, Jack Donahue, of course. Uh, I'm still in touch with his family on a regular basis. Um, he wasn't just a colleague, because he was my best friend. He was uh, a mentor, um, and a second father to me, in a lot of ways. So like I said, unfortunately, they've passed on, and and there's been so many people that have, like I said, you start picking too many, and you you're going to forget somebody. So I don't want to do that. But those are the people that have. And then, like I said, my relationship with Roy Brown has been special. And I would like to think we support each other as brothers.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, and I'm sure Roy feels the same way. And wow, great conversation, Coach. We appreciate you joining us. It meant a lot. It was a pleasure to have you on. And will I see you in Calgary again? Or
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to be there in another 2 or 3 weeks for the stretch run.
okay,
So that we haven't nailed down dates yet or anything like that, but that would be my uh, wish is to get back for the stretch run and hopefully help where I can. And the league is so interesting this year. It's so much parity. Um, I think it's anybody's ball game. Um, and the nature of the league being that it's so fluid. There's players coming and going. Trey Scott, off the summer league now. I don't
right.
know how many other players in the league are doing that, but um, yeah, it's going to be an interesting finish to the season. And we were at a meeting yesterday with the GMs, with Shane, you know, with Shane James and Mike and Coach Taroba, and I said, we're preparing for the last 7 games and hopefully the playoffs and a good playoff run. But I congratulated them on the job that they've done to take an expansion franchise. We're one of the 3 or 4 teams with a winning record. We just went through our toughest part of the season. The next couple of weeks is a little bit of a break. And I think that the players are going to need that in terms of physically and mentally, and get ready for the stretch run. So I think so far it's been a great experience. We're working with the surgeon. I think everybody's to be congratulated. The crowds are great, enthusiastic. Um, it's been a real positive summer for me.
Oh, it's great to hear. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. And wow, tremendous conversation. I think that's it for another episode of Canada Hoops. And I want to thank the legend Steve Konchalski for joining us. Thank you for listening. Download, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Keep supporting Canada basketball, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Coach.